You ready, Takia? Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Rules and City Government Committee to order. Please note for the record, Alderman Arnett and Alderman Savage are in attendance. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll move that, but I'd like to remove discussion of the Forest Drive sector study and the Chesapeake Bay critical area.
From the agenda completely?
I said I'd like to.
Is there a second for that motion? Hearing no second. Sorry, Mr. Gutwall. Would you like to make the motion to approve the agenda as written?
So move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Appointments and reappointments to committees. The first item, AP 6918, the reappointment of Samuel Callahan Jr. to the Civil Service Board. Mr. Callahan, would you like to join us at the table? Yes, and welcome.
Well, you can come up here.
These are hot seats up here, though. I don't know. You probably would enjoy it better back there. I'm just thinking. So you're up for reappointment to the Civil Service Board. So why do you want to be reappointed? Would you make sure your microphone, press the button where it says push?
How's that?
Oh,
Good.
much better.
All right. I've been on the board for about 4 or 5 years. I think I've contributed. I would like to continue to do so. I think I have some insight that can add to the members. And so I think that I would like to do it again.
Well, great. Well, as an employee person, as a union person, I truly appreciate the value of the Civil Service Board. I thank you for wanting to continue. Okay. Questions? Alderman Savage?
Yeah, I also want to just echo that. Thank you. As a former employee, thank you for serving on the board. Sure. And so how often do you typically have meetings? I think it's called on an as-needed basis, right?
That's correct. We're going to have 2 scheduled meetings coming up next week concerning jobs, approval, going over to make sure that the qualifications match, the things that are needed for those positions match, everything is spelled correctly, and that the qualifications meet the job necessary to be done.
And this is for which positions?
Right now, we are waiting for HR to tell us what positions they want next. We have done several departments so far in the past 2 months.
Oh, okay. Great.
Well, as always, we appreciate, and we know, since we're virtually volunteers, we know what volunteer service is like, and that you're willing to continue to do it is much appreciated. So
sure.
Thank you very much for your service.
Is the board fully staffed?
No, we would definitely like to have 2 other people if we can get them. It would be much appreciated because right now, with just the 3 of us, it's hard to get schedules together where everyone can meet. That's the problem right now. That's why we're only meeting twice next week. Tax season's ending for me on Monday. Hallelujah. But so far as the other member, he's a lawyer. And of course, he's quite busy all the time. So the other person is a part-time worker, but still, the schedules don't always mesh. So it would be nice if we had 2 other people, so it wouldn't be so tight.
Do you know whether any names have been forwarded to the mayor's office for consideration?
At this point, I don't know. I know that Tony, one of the members, has suggested someone, but now how far it went, I don't know. But we would certainly appreciate if we could have 2 more qualified people, 2 more qualified candidates to come.
Ms. Green, could you make a note to ask Mr. Rowell
Nope.
if they're, no, I'm sorry, Ms. Hillary Ratrovich now has that job, see if there are candidates in the pipeline, and if so, see what we can do to move those forward.
Much appreciated.
So,
So,
All right.
Madam Chair, I move that we recommend favorably to the City Council for reappointment of Mr. Callahan.
I'll second that.
okay, all in favor of the reappointment, the recommendation of the reappointment of Mr. Callahan to the Civil Service Board, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Your name will come, I guess it'll be on the next City Council
Which is the
agenda,
29th.
which is, yeah, the 29th. Usually, it's on the consent calendar, actually, so there's not even a discussion. So I wouldn't think you'd need to be there.
Okay.
But we'll
But
make a favorable.
if you need me, please let me know.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for coming down
Thank you
today.
all. Okay.
All right. Next item is ID 41619, the Forest Drive Eastport Sector Study Draft. Yes, Mr. Gutwall, you could not escape.
I tried, Pete.
Yeah, I was with you.
Yeah.
I saw your escape last night. I think you are the ringleader in that little band of merry men. I could see it working around the room.
You answer. I'm going to ask you.
So you were the brave one that came up to ask, can we go now? And then I wasn't sure of the answer that you got.
I looked at Rick Gordon and said,
Well, I have to ask, have you been given any direction on how we're moving forward?
not really. I've given, several thoughts and ideas that I know are floating out there. So should we start? Should I say Pete Gutwall, Director of Planning and Zoning? Or is that already given? I'm looking at Takia. Sally Nash, Comprehensive, Chief of Comprehensive. So, not specifically, no. There's been suggestions of task force, and I know it's been remanded back to the Planning Commission formally by the mayor. And to me, we were going to go through continue the committee processes and get the thoughts and ideas from the committees, work it into another draft or recommendations back to the Planning Commission for their review. I wasn't even sure whether we were required to hold another public hearing or not based on that, so I haven't gotten.
Well, if the resolution is reintroduced,
Then it needs a public
Right.
hearing for the
Yeah.
Planning Commission. Okay.
From what Ms. Smith sent out to us, she had inquired about whether the committees would then be acting and then sending it back to, and I thought initially it was coming back to this committee.
That's
but-
what you had stated from the beginning, that you would like all the other committees to submit their ideas or amendments to the rules, and then rules would go through them, and then we would go from there. But in between that time, it got remanded back to the Planning Commission. So
And the Planning Commission has asked
they're asking lots of questions. and
what they're supposed to be doing with it
Right.
now that it's been remanded. So who gives them direction before, is that an unknown?
Typically, it's me, so I was under the impression that we would get, like I said, everybody's thoughts and ideas from the committees. We would work it back to the Planning Commission. But then, I heard there's a task force that was discussed, and I don't know if they're actually doing that or not doing that. I haven't been told one way or the other with that.
Well, Alderman Arnett, you're supposed to be part of that task force. I
Right.
understand it was Ward 3 and Ward 8.
Well, it's all wards, but
Well, that was my hope, that it wouldn't be exclusive to 2 wards.
no, it's not.
Okay.
but I thought is going to be for the whole comp plan, or is that not?
Well,
Well,
what's the difference between the sector study and the whole comp plan?
But that's, so all I've seen, I think the last we heard from Ms. Smith was she attached a document that were the recommendations from the mayor. And I don't think it included a task force, but we did bring it up. So we haven't made a decision on that recommendation.
So
Madam Chair, do we want to perhaps make recommendations to the mayor's recommendation?
Well, to whom does it go is the question. We can make our recommendations. Clearly, the mayor has made his recommendations. This task force is making recommendations.
When you say recommendations from the mayor, I saw from Susie Smith a set of questions that would be
Well, you
alternatives.
referred-
That's what I don't mean recommendations in terms of what should be in the study. I just mean recommendations in terms of the process, the next step. And that's Ms. Smith sent. It's moving forward on the Eastport study, sector study, and listed a number of things here. The first one was standing committees continuing their review. All standing committee recommendations forwarded to planning commission. And then number 2 is each council member collect and make a list of their work concerns from their work constituents.
Right, so I was thinking we could still keep coming to the committees, if you'll have us, and you will tell us the top things you want the planning commission to get more information about, or amendments to the plan if you've gotten that far in your thinking. It depends. And so that's why I brought the Housing and Human Welfare Committee amendments to go back to your original plan, Alderwoman Finlayson, where this is sort of like a clearinghouse for all of the information we get from the other committees.
Right.
And I guess Planning Commission. But so we're meeting May 2nd with the Planning Commission to kind of review the process and say, you know, these are the top concerns we've heard that we all need to look at more as we go forward.
So you expect to have the recommendations, amendments, concerns from all the committees by May 2nd?
I don't know if we'll have them all. I see this as sort of an iterative process.
Okay. Okay, well.
So we're having this is on the work session for the 18th, right?
That's right.
The comp
Okay.
plan is.
No, right.
The comprehensive plan is on the 18th, not the forest. So my 2 cents was to get from all the committees what specifically you need to be changed in the plan, or what recommendation of changes. Take that back to the planning commission and move forward with that.
Right.
Then we can start the comprehensive. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, Alderman Arnett, but then we can start the process for the comprehensive plan in a process where we're putting together the task force and all that. But we wanted to talk about that on the 18th because I think we've discussed some of the ideas with the planning commission, and that would be, and that part of the 18th is to say, okay, everybody's in agreement of here's the process. Here's what a comprehensive plan is. Here's the process that we wanted to do in terms of of completing the comprehensive plan, so everybody feels comfortable in the direction we're going. So we're not holding, stakeholder meetings and/or public meetings that people don't feel are, appropriate, or whatever the case may be, or added steps to the process. We have basically a standard set of steps that we would recommend or suggest, and if there's changes to that, we want to know that up front so we can move that forward. But the Forest Drive sector study, since it got remanded back to the Planning Commission, I wasn't sure how a task force was going to intertwine with the Planning Commission dealing with the recommendations from the committee versus a task force, so that got confusing to me, which it seems like it's getting confusing amongst you guys as well.
Well, what I gathered was that this task force was going to, in my mind, serve the function of all the other committees, all the other meetings that you had.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know what would come out of it that's different from the other 42 meetings that you already had, other than different people get to hear the information. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have another agenda.
So the legislation, the resolution is being drafted. I haven't seen it. But it is focused on the comp plan. Because part of it is Rhonda had so many concerns about things that were in her ward that didn't get into the sector study that she wants to be considered in the sector study. So she's talking about how we're going to get that all taken care of. And once you start saying things like that, I know Fred is talking about things that he thinks impact on Ward 2. I think Ward 1 is the only one left. And I think Ward 1 is impacted too. If all the traffic backs up on Forest Drive and we start flushing them through Eastport into Ward 1, Ward 1 is going to be affected as well. So there's, pardon?
I don't need a task force.
Yeah, well, I know you don't, and there's 6 people that are in favor of a task force, and there's...
I don't know that I'm in favor, because I don't know the makeup of the task force. What I read was Ward 8 and Ward 3.
No,
That's not a task force.
I haven't seen, Rhonda's asked for the legislation to be drafted. I haven't seen it either. But it is more than that. There's representation from all 8 wards. Uh-oh.
What was that?
We're arguing amongst ourselves while you guys are.
Well, we haven't seen the new legislation, so who knows what it's going to say.
You apparently have been on a lot of emails. I haven't read them yet because I was away. Sally, and you've responded to some of them from Rhonda. And I think one of them you said, "That's good!" exclamation point or something.
I saw her email with the 12 concerns she had about the study.
Who?
Oh.
No, this is about the
about the state highway.
Yeah, getting
work.
together, city, county, and state people.
Right, which I think is different than the task force. I thought it was an interjurisdictional work group.
I'm an imperfect messenger because I haven't seen the legislation and I haven't read the emails. So, but it is this notion of, because Forest Drive is county and Aristide Allen is state, and a lot of the improvements in the solution section are talking about doing things with the roads, complete streets, things like that. The sense that I got from Rhonda is we can't work this if we're just trying to do it from the city when there's all of these external powers that have to be involved in it. So again, we'll have to wait till we see the legislation and see where that's going. In the meantime, though, I would like to point out, having just received the CIP last night and looking at the Forest Drive sector study portion of the CIP, I have to say that it is woefully inadequate to the solutions section, Appendix E. It's almost like ships passing in the night. There's nothing about complete streets in there, and that's the 5-year plan. I mean, there's like $573,000 over 5 years. And, to me, the big rub is I call it upzoning, you can call it what you want, but the change in community character is only going to be successful if we mitigate it with all of these improvements to infrastructure. So all of the things, the best part of that study, I think, was attachment E, which really started to give us a roadmap for all of these things. And it talked about all the solutions and so on and so forth, which was the sense of the Eastport Civic Association is come up with the budget plan, the spending plan for all of these mediations before we move on to passing a plan, because we're pretty sure we're going to get the development. We ain't so sure we're going to get the mediation. And I think that's the number one rub in my read from my citizenry is we're going to get the growth, but we're not going to get anything that's going to mediate it. And I think of my weekend in New York on Broadway and 47th, where the pedestrians cross the street and then 3 cars get through the light and 3 more behind them are honk, 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 and then 3 more and 3 more. I just see us going to a world like that if we don't properly plan the mediation. And some of the mediation is get people out of their cars, and I want to know what deity you're going to have. Maybe Alex Pline is going to be going to everybody's house personally and telling them, don't take your car. But I think there's a lot of coordination that has to go on between our budget processes and our public work processes and our county and state processes that you bring up in the solution section, but there's nothing to make it happen. And that's why I think people are making this jump from the study, which, as Bob Waldman describes it, is a vision, to the plan, which is a roadmap for accomplishing all of these things. And once you say the word plan, and since you're dealing with 2/3 of the city anyway, that's why people make the leap from this sector to the citywide, which I think is a logical thing for them to do, but we can't help it if they do it, and they're going to do it. So,
Well, clearly, we don't know where we're going. And since we don't know the difference between a plan and a vision, from what I'm hearing, and have been hearing, I thought that this was a plan that enacted our vision. But for my ward, Forest Drive should be a street, not a highway. And until we decide that Forest Drive is just not a means to get to 50 or to get to some other place very quickly, we're not going to be the community and have the community character that my ward wants and needs, and that the businesses want and need on the Forest Drive corridor. So we're not going to decide on that, because we're not going to be able to agree.
well, it's not only that. We can't control it. The county controls the
Well,
road.
but we can control what goes on that street.
But I think we're getting a
Okay.
little bit, I think we've heard, we know each other's views on this. I mean, do we want to focus on what's the next step in the process? Because I'm still not clear. I mean, I support the idea of having a task force, but I also think the council should have some kind of facilitated discussion, because I know we do have some commonalities in terms of what we do, the things that we agree about in the study. And I
Right.
think it'd be good to hear that out. And then we can give a clear message to them that, hey, the council clearly supports X, Y, and Z, and maybe the things that we aren't sure on, we can get more clarification from the planning commission. What I'm saying that is I have my own ideas for next steps, but I don't know how to get to a point where, are we going to be making recommendations to them for next steps? Are we going to put something in a resolution, or are we going to give the mayor's office guidance? I'm not sure where we go from here.
Well, and that's what I was trying to say. We don't know where we're
Well,
going.
but I like your plan.
Well, but that was
I
a
think
plan.
this
but
committee
it's-
be the coordinating committee.
But we're
Yeah.
the only ones who have agreed to that. None of the other committees, even though housing responded, because we were there, but the other committees haven't responded.
Well, Ellie gave us her worksheet, and the transportation committee, I thought, had 6 amendments or 6 recommendations.
Environmental will be done next week.
Okay, well, if
Yeah.
they're all going to send them here, then
So my sense is that we owe the planning commission something. We
I
can't just
agree.
send it back to them and say, we didn't like it, do it again. We should say,
Well-
we should give them some substantive direction saying, we need more information, or we need more help, or we didn't think this was fully developed, or whatever. And I thought that's what we were going to do as the collecting agent for all of the committees. I thought we should have done it as a committee of the whole, but if we're going to do it piecemeal, then somebody's got to focus it. Comes to you. If I were the planning commission, I wouldn't want to meet until I knew what the heck are we supposed to do.
Well,
Right.
and that was my question for Dr. Nash, is if the expectation is that, and these are amendments, these are not recommendations, I mean, they are, but these are the Housing Committee's amendments. So will all the committees,
R45,
pardon me?
because that was still when R45 was still alive.
Okay.
So that was their amendment.
It lives in
So I
our
think
memory.
It becomes, they become essentially recommendations.
These are
I
their
believe,
recommendations, right.
but they're no longer technically amendments until
So,
something else comes up
but there
to
is,
attach them to.
the amendment that's
Well,
being,
those are attached to R45. See, that was the
But that's been
conversation that we
withdrawn
had.
anyway.
Right. But they made amendments to R45, which were those.
so what are the committees recommending, making recommendments, making,
Well, transportation. Alan,
making
you-
haven't done it
amendments
yet.
to? The previous legislation? Alderman, woman,
What's the question again?
I don't know, you were talking, I was calling on you.
Somebody
'cause-
was, I was
I was
answering.
asking Ellie, I
Oh.
thought transportation was
trans-
making,
Transportation is looking at it this week because
Okay.
Rhonda was hesitant last week to take action. I don't think we're going to, it's an ID, it's an information, so we're not reviewing it as a resolution anymore. We're making, as Sally said, the reason for the committee reviews is to make comments that will go back to the planning commission. If I may ask a question, though, and Taki, you might be able to help with this, what is, do we then reintroduce the Forest Drive sector study as do we need to take legislative action with the Forest Drive sector study at all? Or do we just go back to the planning commission with these comments that are then brought into the comprehensive plan? Do we need a vehicle to do that, or is that the planning commission's task? Does
I
that make
believe that remanding it back to the planning commission, they will then move forward with redoing, based on the input they receive, a new Forest Drive sector study. I know we're intertwining the Forest Drive sector study and the comprehensive plan, and this has been my concern. I mean, if we're going to create a task force on the Forest Drive sector study, that delays the comprehensive planning activities. I mean, and
Why
I
does
know
that delay the activities for the?
because I have limited resources to staff a task force and planning commission dealing with a Forest Drive sector study while kicking off a comprehensive plan. It's going to be very difficult for staff to juggle both things at the same time, unless the task force is going to go on and do its own thing. And we should probably, and ideally, it doesn't have to be, but I'm just saying ideally, you would have that Forest Drive sector study done before you move forward with your comprehensive plan, because it becomes part of it.
Well, but that's assuming, I'm not entirely sure it's going to be adopted as an actual amendment to the 2009 comp plan. It may just get adopted as guidance for the next 2022 comp plan.
Okay, but you still need to know what direction everybody wants to include in the comprehensive plan as part of that acceptance of that study. Sure, we can move forward, but then it becomes a limited resource issue, and that was my comment back to the administration about if we're going to do task force, planning commission, Forest Drive sector study, and the comprehensive plan, who am I pulling on to attend and follow all these activities at the same time?
What do we know of the task force?
I don't know anything other than it's been a suggestion of something that we need to do for the Forest Drive sector study. That's all I know.
And did you say legislation was being drafted for a task force?
Mm-hmm.
So,
But for the comp plan.
So, I mean, let's
for
walk
the
through.
comp plan, not for the sector
well,
study?
but
It's
it's
trunk.
going to be taking the elements of the sector study for that part of the city, for that part of the comp plan. And I think that the.
And what is the planning commission supposed to do in the between time? Wait for the task force to give their recommendations before they deal with the committee
I
members?
think that they're thinking of operating concurrently and not with staff resources. In fact, I think the staff and planning commission members would be invited to be a member of the task force. This is a totally citizen-driven, there's no alderpersons on it. This is.
Well, I don't know any of this, so okay.
Pardon?
I didn't know any of this.
And no
So.
professional staff?
No, well, actually, they're talking about getting grant money and supporting themselves and getting outside consultation.
So play this out for me in a time frame.
I think that the sense of the task force is operating over the next year. But as a citizen group,
For the,
populated by citizens.
Oh, okay.
And it is with the intent of citizens saying what they want to happen in these various areas.
So we're going to
in these
be
various
going
cities.
out to the public for the comprehensive plan, and the citizens group is going to be talking about the Forest Drive sector study overlapping with what we're reaching out, and they're going to be confused, but the public's going to be completely confused as to whether they're commenting on the Forest Drive sector studies task force versus the Department of Planning's.
We're doing this for you, buddy.
Well, I'm wondering if we
without
could
you,
just,
though.
Do you see the confusion that the public's going to have if we have the confusion that we're having?
It's the public that is going to be the task force.
well, I wonder if we should, if the task force should be maybe just focusing on the comp plan then, and developing recommendations. It's
Until
kinda
we
like
see the
similar to
legislation,
what-
I don't even know what
okay.
Rhonda asked to go in the legislation. She's asked Linda to draw it up. Linda said that she will have it in a couple of weeks. She says that she talked to everybody on the council. She has 6 people that are in favor
Rhonda said
of...
she's talked to everybody on the council?
Yeah?
She has not.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just...
Don't kill the
for
messenger.
clarification, I'm not going to kill the messenger, but that is not accurate, but okay.
Okay. Well, and, you know, I will see it when we see it. I'm not the drafter of it. This is a concept that she's worked up with the Office of Law. But she did bounce it. She thought she bounced it back and forth with you, Sally. No.
I got of the emails I saw. I thought they were recommendations for the Forest Drive sector study as changes to the, meaning do an MOU to have this cooperation between specifically the county, the city, the.
Well,
That's what I
yeah.
thought.
I thought that email wasn't to create a task force. I thought it was to create specifically, these were amendments that a task force should be put together with citizens, city, county, you know,
I
and
did hear
state folks.
discussion
And
of
those
an
were recommendations that she thought should be included in the Forest Drive sector study specifically, or somehow worded into it. That's what I took, at least the emails that I think that you're talking about. So I took it as specific amendments to the Forest Drive sector studies, the way I took it.
Her concerns, her
Yeah.
12 concerns.
No,
Yeah, I thought that was what she wanted the planning commission to look at, and one of her recommendations was that there be an MOU with the state and the county to
Yes, that's
work together
definitely part
on
of it.
Forest Drive. I don't think she said anything about a task force in those emails, but I could be wrong.
Alderwoman,
Thank you. I'm actually here for the ULI, but I'm sorry if I'm taking up time, but I want to bring up something that Ross, my colleague, Alderman Arnett brought up, and this is my being new and being a little confused, is you mentioned that you saw the capital improvement budget and there wasn't anything in there for the Forest Drive sector study, and maybe I misunderstand the process, but when I read the Forest Drive sector study, it actually had suggestions to put in the capital improvement budget. For example, the need to update 3 signals that don't communicate with the county or state signal systems. We could do that now. We could have done that now. We could have done that 6 months ago. We could have gotten that into the capital improvement budget, and that's why I get.
So that is in the capital improvement. There are 3 signals over 5 years in the CIP, 4 lights. There's the 4th light, which is the one at Gibraltar and someplace. The one that the developer and the county and the state and the city are all paying part of. The city's paying 75. So
But-
there's 2 different signalizations there. Then there's also in the CIP a section for more money for the Eastport, the Forest Drive Eastport sector study. And that, I believe, I can't remember whether it's $573 or $753,000 over a 5-year period. But nothing near the magnitude of the kinds of money that the, so I think you're right on, Ellie. I think that's exactly what we ought to be doing. That was so much of the good work of the sector study, was it went from vision to specific implementation steps. And that's what the Eastport Civic Association took up and said, yeah, do these 5 things, one of which is plan out the money for all of that. Before you approve the plan or change the zoning, plan out the money for all the mediation. And so, and one of them was just 10K for the finishing of the traffic study model, which I don't know whether you've gotten that or done that yet or not, but you saw the 5 recommendations.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up because in my view, that's the purpose of a study, to help populate, you know, the capital improvement budget. You can't wait
Yes.
for all of the stuff to miraculously show up in the, oh, they figured out the
Right.
street, yay, now we can approve the Forest Drive sector study. It doesn't work that way. This is a study so that you can, you know, pick and choose and,
Well, we've seen
anyway,
fit
so we'll
to-
figure it out, I'm sure.
Or not.
We've seen fit to kill the traffic or the sector study as far as legislation is concerned. So now we're not sure where we are.
No, but I thought that the plan, the mayor withdrew it. I thought that the mayor said that his notion was that after the planning commission re-looked at it, considered, they may say, hey, we don't think we need to make any changes. That's within their prerogative.
That's what Susie
And then
laid out.
it would come back as another resolution simply to make it a fulfillment of what was required in the 2009.
If he had not withdrawn it, we could have planned a strategy for dealing with it, but he did withdraw it. So now we don't know what the next steps are. We really
Well,
don't. We don't know about the task
We
force.
do, though. We've got a recommendation from
Susie-
Susie of
right.
7 steps, and we could go through these and at least make changes if we want. I mean, there's 7 steps. They go to the standing committee, which we talked about, we want them to do. Each council member collects comments from their ward. We share those comments with each other, refer the list to the planning commission, then we hold a joint meeting with the planning commission. Planning commission considers the comments received and sends to the council their comments and recommendation. And then we have either a new resolution for adoption or for consideration for the next comp plan.
And see, I'm following all of
I
those
think that's-
steps.
Well,
Yeah, I think that's-
she sent that to us and asked which of these things, if I remember correctly, I got it also, which of these things she thought we should do.
And I
That
sent
was a
back my
different-
answer.
No, that was a different email.
Well,
This is the actual proposal from Gavin's recommendations that came after the list you're talking about.
so who decided that
Can you
was the
forward that
step
to us,
moving
Bob?
forward?
Well, they didn't. This is their recommendation to the
Whose
council.
recommendation is what I'm
From
asking?
Susie, from Gavin. And so that's why I think we could chime in here if we wanted to say, is this the recommendation the Rules and Government Committee is going to be recommending? Do we think it should be tweaked? And then we actually are recommending a path forward to give them guidance and everybody.
I am good with that, if you will share it with all of us. However, we had a path forward previously that was killed. So I'm not comfortable with this becoming the path forward. But if that's all we have, then that's what we use. But clearly, there are some committees that have already acted, okay? Are we going to, and do we have the authority to ask the other committees to follow suit?
Yes, we do.
Okay. You have spoken, it's ordained.
No, I think
Okay.
I think the city attorney said the committees are more than welcome to. They can do like we're doing with the critical area. We're getting thoughts and ideas from you outside of the legislative process, so we know where to go. So I think the committees can make suggestions and ideas of what their concerns are, so we can share it like the way Susie's laid it out. You know.
So my answer to Susie on that was yes.
I responded the same way, but I didn't see everybody else's response.
It got aborted by Rhonda's comment at that point, which is the email that you missed, where Rhonda said, I want to have a task force, and then Susie left off saying, do I have it, because she said she had talked to 6 aldermen, and Susie said, do I have a show of hands on who she talked to? And that's where it stopped.
But I just want to show hands in terms of who supported the citizen task force to be the next step, and then it just ended.
Okay, well,
I don't see them as being antithetical,
Right.
and I think they can go on concurrently.
Yeah.
I don't think we can stop it if citizen groups want to get together,
Right.
and they are.
We should be
and they're
encouraging
getting
it.
together a lot, and across the city, I think that's going to happen, whether whether we want it to happen or not, and that's fine. I'm happy that they're interested in it.
Why does that require a resolution, though?
It doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Well, a resolution, I don't know. I truly don't know.
Well, and I think that's the question, we don't know.
Right.
So, and I'm not opposed to the community's input. What I am concerned about is whether professional staff is going to be guiding any of this. Because, there is professional knowledge that is used in creating these plans. And I don't think any of us sitting up here have that kind of skill set. But we do have
Didn't want to tell you about it.
paid professional staff that is responsible for doing this.
I think
So anyway, so what is your
the
pleasure
resolution,
moving forward?
let me just, I think the resolution has to do with creating this tripart memorandum of understanding between the city, the county, and the state. To pull them together, because there's different jurisdictions all along the corridor. And I believe that the mayor and Rhonda have talked to Stewart, and Rhonda talked to Hogan. So, I mean, this has been moving on, and I guess we'll get to see it when we see I believe the legislation is supposed to be ready for the 29th. So
Okay.
we'll see it when we see it.
So, what do we have to do at this point? We have recommendations that have been provided by housing, just for our edification, or
Well,
just as an
that's why I thought
information?
if you were gathering all of the recommendations from the other committees, I would bring them all to you
Right.
and discuss them with you, and so you would know what they were. And
So my plan on this committee is I do have a 2-page, single-space list of observations. I have been going through page by page with page references to things that I either had questions about or didn't agree with or were concerned. And I thought, and I know other people have done it with page by page references. So, if you're going to be critical, you've got to come back with a solution. You can't just say, I don't like this. You've got to come back and say, here's what I don't understand, or here's what I think should happen. So, but it's been a long slog. I know, Rob, you've been going through it page by page. My thing looks like a porcupine with all of the paper clips on it, and I'm slogging away at it.
So are the two of you interested
And I'd rather
in
do that
bringing-
than the budget.
Well, you can't choose. But are you all interested in bringing your recommendations to this body?
Yes, I plan to.
Okay,
can
I can give you a partial list just so you'll see where I'm thinking. I'd be happy to share that with you.
If I can make a suggestion, I think if we focus on Susie's list.
Can you
and-
forward that to all of us?
Yeah, I'll forward it.
Yeah.
I think we can perhaps look at how to put the Rules and Government Committee kind of part of this process. Because I think the way it lays out, it talks about
Could
getting
you send it to us,
recommendations.
please?
Yep.
I'll send it right now. Talks about getting recommendations from the wards, and then that coming back to the council. Maybe those kind of recommendations can come back to the Rules and Government Committee, and we can talk about those along with our other comments.
The reason it should
Susie
come to
sent this on April
rules,
3rd, by the way.
the reason I think in code why rules should be the clearing agent for this is we have purview over Title 21, and this is a Title 21 activity. And so I think it's appropriate. I think it's easier for the staff if we try to be the ones. It's not like you won't see these also, but whatever we can do to package it to make it easier for you to look at.
Well, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that because that's a pretty monumental task in itself, considering I know you're going to have a lot of comments, and I've seen, I think, Ellie's, and I know other people have lists as well.
Well, and
I think maybe we should just let staff handle, I don't know, the more I think about it, I'm not sure what role this committee should provide.
Well, let me ask you, one of the things that I've wanted, and I can just do it one-on-one, but I wanted to sit down with Ellie and go over her spreadsheet. I want to get a better understanding
That's
of
what
it.
I think we should do. I think after we get our comments from the wards, I think we should get together as a council before we go to the planning commission. I think we need to actually see what kind of consensus we can get amongst ourselves and determine what questions we want the planning commission to even answer and look into more. And that's not on this list at all. So that would be my suggestion, is we put that on this list before it gets referred to the planning commission. And I think the thing I'm not quite clear yet is what role this committee should play in all of this.
You have been highlighting what Susie has given us, and the first item is all standing committee recommendations. So the standing committees continue to move forward with their review. And it doesn't
Right.
say it, but based on their title, responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're saying no. So I
No,
don't,
I'm not saying no to that. I think the committee should continue to do that. I'm just trying to figure out what role. It's easier to think of the other committees because they all have specific, be it environment, transportation, housing. Is this committee going to look at a specific area of? I know we have Y governance over Title 21, I think it is.
well, I think we said the last time, and I've heard it today, that we would be the clearinghouse. They would bring their recommendations to us, and then we would present to the Planning Commission. And so all the titles would be captured from the areas, from the committees whose responsibility it is to cover that area, as opposed to us looking into transportation when we have a transportation committee,
Right.
who will have a better feel for that.
But what are we going to do once we receive those as a committee?
Well, we'll talk through them with staff so we understand them, and then we sit down with the Planning Commission. There's got to be some direction.
Why-
Well, this
why would
one
we
was
talk-
all of the council sitting down with the planning commission.
Right,
Yeah.
they would.
But why
It
would-
wouldn't just be us.
Right. But why would we be going through, for example, the transportation committee or the housing committee with? Shouldn't it be that committee?
So here's what I thought on that. Suppose we have some recommendations on housing from this committee. Are we just going to send two different lists, or should we say, let's coordinate with housing and say, yeah, we like housing's recommendation number 1, 3, and 5, and we have a couple of our own. So, but if we just want to give it to the staff,
I'm not sure that's
Well-
fair to the other committees.
I think if you have issues or recommendations or concerns for those committees, then you go to those committees. So that their recommendations that come forward are, I don't want to say codified, but have a consensus. If not, we're never going to get through this, ever.
that's the point.
Well, that probably is the point. Let's just beat this horse so that it can't move any further than where we left it. But if you have issues with what they have sent to us, then we go back to them and make our case.
Yeah, I mean, that is a way it can happen. It's not the only way. I thought your suggestion, which I agreed with, was that we act as the clearinghouse. But if they want to just give it all to Sally and we give it all to Sally, that's fine with me too, as long as they get there.
But that's not what I was saying. We look to Sally and Pete for their guidance to make sure everything here is legal and procedurally correct. But the recommendations come from the committees.
Well, I think that's right. It does come from the committees.
So how do you get, and I have recommendations also, how do our recommendations get in other than to go back to the committees? Your 2 pages, single spaced, you're going to have to divide by title and take those
Now
to,
you have to
he
figure it
said
out.
it, and take those to the committee to say, these are my issues, can you
They're
consider?
organized by groups.
Of what?
They're of various
People.
categories. Yeah, people.
People.
You know, like
Well, I
I
mean, we're
think-
asking them to look at them by chapter.
tall, medium, short.
It might, well, what worked well for housing, and I know it's different, but is that I got comments from the members of housing before the meeting. I was able to do some research and address some of those issues and see exactly what they wanted. And then they made the amendments, and then I prepared the amendments, and we're going to be discussing them at the next meeting to make sure this is really captures what they want. So I think something along those lines, if you can send me your comments, maybe you could pare them down a little bit, or consolidate them a little bit. So there's things I could take chunks of and address, and then I can come back to you with that, with the research done, and and then we could discuss those. Either you could focus on land use and zoning issues, or you could, because that encompasses, so much of the plan. I don't know if there would be too much else left for things that would really involve other committees, but.
So are you willing to do that? Are you willing to give Sally your list of?
Yeah. I want her to have it.
So, instead
No,
of
no,
you
no.
going back to the committee to make
Well,
the
I
case
thought
for
we were
your.
going to share here first,
Okay,
as
what?
our committee recommendations. So
Well,
I
if
thought
you
we were-
send me each of your individual ones, I'll put them together, and then we can discuss them at the next meeting together. And then we can decide which ones are going to get elevated to Planning Commission needs to address this.
Right.
And then I can draft something again and come back to you and say, is this what you meant? Is this what you were looking for? And then I can go to Planning Commission with that.
And in the meantime, I'm getting the list of things from the Eastport Civic Association, which I
Right.
haven't seen yet,
Right.
but I know they're working on it. So,
did they already send us something?
well, they sent us the letter with the 5
Yeah.
recommendations, but then they apparently are working on specific critiques here and there throughout the study.
Okay.
So can I make a couple of, well, first of all, I'd like to make, I guess, a few amendments to Susie's document. And one would be in the first paragraph to say, all standing committee recommendations forwarded to the Rules and Government Committee first, right? And then,
Okay.
and then on to the Planning Commission. Does that meet what you're...
It does. I'm
Well
not
done.
sure these are in
The right order?
order, however.
Yeah, I would say the second one certainly should come
Right,
for the first one.
yeah. So these aren't in progressive order.
Well, I think
But,
her intention was I think this is the order she was proposing. We can, because at the very end is the resolution, and it talks about referring our list to the Planning Commission and then having a meeting with them. But I think we could certainly
well,
talk about changing it.
I would think the second and the third would be directed to the committees, not in general. So we each collect or have collected recommendations from our constituents. Those recommendations go before the appropriate committee so that the committee recommendations or amendments will be inclusive of those things. And then it's the joint meeting, and then the
Right.
clearinghouse here, and then the joint meeting of the with the Planning Commission to share and talk through what these amendments are.
So basically they happen concurrently in terms of the standing committee and the constituent concerns.
I would think the constituent concerns have to come first.
Okay.
I would think that we would be bringing, that's what our role
Right.
is, to bring those concerns to our respective committees.
Okay. So if we attach a number to each of these, we would have, the first process would be each council member collects and makes a list of what their ward constituents have said. And then number 2 would be share the list of constituent comments with each other and to the Rules and Government Committee.
Well, I don't think it would come to us because unless it's support for whatever the amendments are that comes out of the committee. I mean, that's how I'm seeing it.
What are you thinking would happen with the constituent comments?
They would go to the appropriate committee so that their amendments would be inclusive of the constituents' concerns.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, that's how I envision it. We don't want constituents, because we're not in touch with them. I mean, we are, but we aren't. But the alderperson is. So that alderperson would get the constituent comments or concerns, bring it to the appropriate committee to be included as part of their amendments.
Okay. So number 2 would be share the list of constituent comments with the committee, appropriate committees. Right. Okay. And then number 3 would be.
No, because I don't have what you're working.
Oh, you don't have this? I don't have a pencil.
You don't have, I'll send it to you. I found it, yeah, in my notes. Did you send it to us? I didn't see.
So, Pete, here's an example of, so my very first comment is that the sector study looks at changing the community character to more dense. So I call it upzoning because that's what it feels like to me. I say, where's the consideration of not changing the community character and the consideration of downzoning? Downzoning is a legitimate response to traffic. If you've got too many people living there or too many things going on, one of the ways to reduce it is reduce the reasons for people to travel there. So to me, I don't know whether that's a legitimate, I mean, I certainly would like the Planning Commission to think about that, but do they think about it as an amendment to the sector study, or do they think about it as a planning issue broader than the sector study?
No, I mean, one of the things that you have said all along is that some things were not very specific. So if you want, I mean, I think the sector study was identifying that zoning changes needed to be made in order to implement. Right. And I mean, Sally uses form-based zoning, but it was not beholden to form-based zoning. That was an example, and the community character types are illustrative. So, as I always say, this is the planning document that leads to the implementation, which is zoning changes, zoning map amendments, zoning text amendments, legislation, and programmatic. So, if you want to specifically suggest under the land use and zoning stuff that the department, and this is, I mean, we talked about this a while ago, the department should evaluate which properties should be downzoned or restricted from further density, or whatever the case may be. You make a recommendation that the solution is to also evaluate which property should be lowered in density or downzoned.
Right.
So that would be something very specific that, we didn't say that that's not an option in there. We didn't specifically list that out, but if you want that pulled out and specifically stated in the plan, that's what I'm looking for.
Right, okay, well that is, and then another one that's near the top of the list was the thing that Commodore brought up, which is, suppose we're successful in redoing this Forest Drive sector, is that neutral to the rest of the city? Or now we're attracting customers to Forest Drive away from Main Street, or away from Maryland Avenue, or away from Outer West Street, or so forth? That risk analysis that he talked about, which again makes it, I mean, I can see how that could fit into the sector study. It makes it much bigger, but it really also is kind of like what is really a comprehensive plan for the whole city. If we do something here and it's good for there, is it also okay for over here that isn't in the sector study?
So
going down a rabbit hole. I feel like we're going down a rabbit hole with this discussion.
But I think it's an important discussion in that it's a plan. And if we're not considering, this is part of what concerns me about this whole thing. We don't have a vision for what we want. We really don't. Forest Drive needs support. The businesses on Forest Drive are not getting the type of attention they should be getting because people are too busy flying by them. You just raised a concern about what that's going to do to Ward 1. My concern is not Ward 1, because people who fly down Forest Drive aren't going to go downtown, because they're going to avoid downtown. They're going to go to the town center, or they're going to go to the mall. They're going to go someplace other than the businesses we have right here in the city. And this is what I hear from the local businesses. We're doing nothing to support them. There's plenty of business to go around if we target it in the proper fashion, and it's not going to hurt Main Street and it's not going to hurt West Street. But what is our plan?
See, I don't accept that statement. In Eastport, we have a choice. We can go to Forest Drive or we can go to Main Street.
But do you?
Yeah, we actually do both. My wife shops at Giant. I'd rather go downtown.
But most people, I would guess, in Eastport do not go downtown.
Oh, I think you're wrong.
Okay, well,
I think you're wrong.
We were discussing
Okay.
specific changes to the
but Pete,
recommendations.
let me ask you a question. Have we done any sort of analysis of our residents in the city and where they shop, where they work, where they recreation?
We've done some survey work. That's always part of the process in this, was asking people what do they do and what are the activities and what are the activities they're looking to do in this corridor. So we have some survey work. It's a representative sample. We plan on doing more, obviously, with the comprehensive plan citywide. But to your point about the sector study, the idea is to focus on what are the strategies for this corridor, not necessarily the whole city, because we know what the specific issues were raised on this corridor and we're trying to address that. As we move forward to the whole city, we're going to look at ways in which we can forward those solutions and strategies and complement it everywhere in the city. We did when Crystal Springs came along and the Planning Commission wanted an economic analysis of Crystal Springs, and at the time they were proposing somewhere around 150,000 square feet of commercial, I think, to 160,000 square feet of commercial. And what was the impact of that 160,000 on the entire city? It's like throwing a pebble in the ocean. I mean, my comment was, if you look, what did you think was going to happen when there's 750,000 square feet right up the street here that got built in Parole Town Center, so and to this 150,000. Now they did mention that a niche would work. A specific retailer would have some impact, but the 150,000 was not going to draw from one place to the other. So it's all order of magnitude. And what you're trying to do is look to ways and strategies. And we're talking about this right now as we have interviews and we're talking with the consultants as to how do we structure the comprehensive plan so that we're talking about the things that we have to meet in terms of, this is part of my presentation on Thursday, but anyways, next Thursday, we have certain state requirements and functional parts of the plan that we have to do, but there's also the community element, if you will. 2009 talked about community character, but it's also the neighborhoods. It's the communities themselves. What is the geographic areas that we should be talking about? What is the existing conditions and what is the plan for those areas? And we're struggling with that right now. That's obviously of the conversations we're having with you. So we're looking at that, and these are some of the things I want to discuss about the comprehensive plan, which would take you to another level than the Forest Drive, which is getting back to the point of ideally we would have this, the direction of where we want to go with this Forest Drive before we start getting knee deep into the comprehensive plan. Yes, you can do it simultaneously, but that was what concerns me.
So thank you for the transition. So I just emailed a proposed, I tried to consolidate our comments into some recommendations from this committee about how to proceed with the sector study. And
It's an email?
yeah, I just emailed it to you. I didn't know how else to share it with you. So the first one, I'll wait till everybody receive it.
Yeah, we have it.
So the first one just is each council member collects and makes a list. I'm sorry, I should share it with you two as well.
Nah, they don't need it.
I'll forward it to you.
Can you get it right now if he sends it?
My fingers aren't that quick. Hold on. All right, there you go. I sent it to both of you. So the first one, like we talked about, was just each council member collects and makes a list of what their ward constituents have said or recommended about the study. That list, number two is that list gets shared with the appropriate standing committees. The items in caps are things that I think the changes we've made to Susie's or Gavin's. Number three would be standing committees continue their review and they forward their recommendations to the Rules and Government Committee, who then forwards to the Planning Commission.
Planning staff.
Or to staff?
Usually,
To the staff.
To staff, yeah.
staff are the conduit to the commission.
To the staff.
I'm not sure it goes to the commission yet, but we keep going.
Okay. Four would be hold a facilitated discussion with the council to identify consensus, key questions for the Planning Commission, kind of in preparation for our meeting with them. And then we refer...
So can you stop for a minute? So under number three, where you say forwarding those recommendations to the Planning Commission, you don't want to send them those recommendations and then have a facilitated discussion, which may very well change those recommendations. So I would delete that second part of number three because it's further down anyway.
Delete
Yeah, it's in number 5.
the part
so you
from
can just
what
drop
to
it.
what?
Yeah.
So we'd say, you can just say, and share with the planning staff.
Yeah, with the planning staff.
So all standing committee recommendations shared, forwarded to the Rules and Government Committee, and then shared with
And
staff.
staff. Mm-hmm. Just and staff.
Okay, and then okay, I gotcha. And staff, and then just leave it there. Oops. And then 4, have the facilitated discussion. And then 5 would be refer the lists and discussion results to the Planning Commission.
I'm not
Or to
sure
staff.
we will have key questions for the Planning Commission. What questions would we have for them? They may have questions for us, but what were you thinking about?
That's telling them what we're thinking about or have issues with on the study.
Well, I mean,
This is going to the Planning Commission.
Right.
Maybe it's more appropriate for staff, but the thing I was getting at is I know I have a lot of questions about form-based zoning.
Oh, yeah.
I want to learn more about it, and I'm trying to... I know that's wouldn't necessarily come from the Planning Commission, but I think that's the conversation to have with them or perhaps with the department before... With the department first? Okay, so maybe we could work that in here then to say...
Well, so the key what would the key questions for the Planning Commission be from the council?
I don't know if it's key questions, but it may be key topics for them to consider.
Yeah, observations.
Yeah,
maybe.
observations or something
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
And there may be a question in there, but it's an observation. So
I'll change it to key topics or observations.
yeah.
So that we say hold a facilitated discussion with the council to identify consensus and prepare key topics for the Planning Commission? Is that what we're saying?
Issues?
Key issues for the...
Observation. Well, I'm thinking kind of for discussion, because I think we've talked about wanting to have a joint meeting with them, and this kind of would set the agenda, because I'm just afraid if we go into our joint meeting with the Planning Commission without an idea of what we want to discuss, it's going to kind of be all over the place.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
I agree, but I think what we would have going in would be the amendments from the committees that we have already codified. We wouldn't just go in without, I mean, that's how I envision it. We would have some very specific amendments for them to consider. And
Can I ask a question? When we say amendments, is that the goal, that we're going to have an amended Forest Drive sector study that will be approved? Or do you know what I'm asking? Is it a
Yeah, I think that's,
is it a legal document? I mean, is that necessary? Because on one hand I hear that, and then on the other I hear that we're just funneling recommendations to carry forward through the planning.
I think from our perspective, as I said before, I think this whole adopting into the 2009 comprehensive plan was the mechanism to formally accept what's in the study. It isn't, and that's
I don't
apparently
think that's
given a
going
lot
to
of
happen.
angst. So
yeah.
if it's just accepted as, you know, from the council as the strategies for this area, then that gives me the confidence that we can roll this up into the comprehensive plan, the new comprehensive plan. It doesn't have to be a...
So once it's vetted by Planning Commission, these recommendations, concerns, comments, et cetera, once those get vetted, then at that point we're able to resubmit the Forest Drive sector study to the council for amending the comp plan with as
No, just
language
accepting the
language
study.
to say that there will be some special languages. This will be accepted as guidelines or something.
Right, the
less-
only difference is that we won't right away be using it to make sure development projects that come through our department are consistent with that document. It won't have that, it won't be elevated to that level, but what we will do is use the recommendations that that there's consensus on and move those into the next comp plan.
Yeah, and somehow there'll be language to say that.
Ellie, Alderwoman, I've sent you the outline that Alderman Savage has completed.
Yeah, sorry.
And
no
number
problem.
8 is a new resolution.
Okay.
And that new resolution, in my mind, would be inclusive of all of the amendments that have been gathered. So yeah, they would be amendments to, and actually, they may not even be amendments because it's a new resolution. They can be
Yeah.
built into the resolution without them being amendments.
And the wording of the resolution will be different this time. It won't be as
Well, we
strong.
assume.
It won't
Well, we don't know that, but
be-
it'll,
right.
yeah.
All right, so I had another, in light of what you, some of your comments, Madam Chair, I'm thinking perhaps after 3, we make a new number 4, that would be the council. Do we want to perhaps meet with planning and zoning for another perhaps specific work session on, maybe, I don't know if that'd be appropriate in that place, but anyway, my idea was to have a specific discussion with you perhaps about form-based zoning or any other concepts that we feel like we need more understanding about.
Well, I think that's number 4. Number 4 is the facilitated discussion with the council, and
Okay.
we changed that to
And staff.
planning staff.
Okay.
So any issues that need further elaboration from
That's a good idea.
the staff should be in number 4. I don't see us moving forward without staff
Yeah.
input at every step of the way. Sorry, but
I agree.
you're it.
Yeah. Okay, so number 4 I reworded to be hold a facilitated discussion with the council and staff to identify and discuss
No, to identify
committee recommendations.
hold a
Develop
facilitated discussion with
consensus.
the council to identify consensus with,
I'm thinking, and so hold a discussion with council and staff to
identify
Discuss.
consensus.
develop consensus and prepare key topics for planning commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not sure we need number 5, because number 6 is hold the joint meeting with the planning commission. So we'll be providing them with all of the information at that time. I mean, we can give it to them ahead of time if you want.
Okay, so I removed that. So it goes right from 4 to 5 would be now hold a joint meeting with the planning commission and discuss the changes proposed both by standing committees and this is,
I'm not sure, I think we can take out the residents with no
that's what I'm thinking
votes.
too, yeah.
We have the aldermen that represent all the
Yeah.
residents.
I agree. The next one, which will be 6, planning commission considers resident and committee issues and the comments of the council members in the earlier joint meeting and sends the council what they believe should be moved forward with a new resolution. Do we want to change that wording?
No.
Well, but I'm not sure the residents, again, the council are the, aldermen are the representatives for the residents. So the planning commission considers the committee amendments and.
Well, I can pretty much
No.
guarantee the residents are going to be coming to the planning commission too.
Yeah,
And they can,
they
oh,
traditionally-
absolutely. We should maybe speak to, and do we want public testimony before we have a new resolution?
That's what I was just thinking. Well, I
Would
guess-
it be on the
Yeah,
record
yeah.
though, would it?
I would want
Oh,
the planning
I-
commission to hold public hearing.
But can they-
Well, we could always have our own before we go to the planning commission, or after they.
The planning commission is the land use authority. So I think they should be holding the public hearing. We have the choice of accepting or rejecting their amendments, just like we did before when Resolution 45
So
was
there's-
before us.
So you're saying we go to them, meet with them, and then they have a public hearing, or have it be?
Yeah, we would have to meet with them first.
Okay. So that'd be a new number.
So are they going to have a public hearing before the new resolution?
It's up to them.
Because we're out of our normal
Just say yes.
process.
Yeah,
Just say
I'm trying
yes.
to think, yeah, because it normally gets referred to them,
Right.
but it's been remanded back to them. To me, we would just take all what we're talking about informally, incorporate that, have a public hearing on that document, and then they would recommend it, because it's been already sort of introduced, but it's been, the document has been remanded back to them. I mean, we
Right.
probably need to talk with law office about this, because, yeah,
Right.
I'm not quite sure how
Well,
they
technically,
would hold
it's-
a public hearing on
we
something that's-
did we remand the resolution or the actual study?
We amended the study.
I thought we did the study, yeah.
But then you withdrew the resolution.
Didn't even-
But we
so it
withdrew the
doesn't-
resolution, so
Yeah,
it doesn't
We
exist.
remanded
no
the study.
So
and
maybe you need to
withdrew the
introduce a new
resolution.
resolution for them to hold a public hearing. I'm thinking, yeah. Even though you've had all this stuff going on, which is good, because then everybody knows where everybody's, coming from.
I think we should maybe wait till after our meeting with them.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
just
it would
saying,
have
before
to.
they hold their public
Yeah.
hearing on the document, that you introduce a resolution.
Okay,
At the
so
bottom-
number 9 would be the planning commission holds their public hearings
At the
on it.
very end of the list. Okay.
Yeah, and then it comes to the council. Hopefully by then it's,
Hopefully by then our term will be up.
I was thinking it'll be winter or spring or, so we took out number 5, right?
I'll send you a second the updated list.
Well, let's finish it if you're taking, since you're doing such a great job taking these notes. So we should have this perfect before it even gets to rewrite and planning commission a second time
Yeah, it'll be perfect.
for their public hearing. Yeah, right.
Won't need a public hearing because everyone will be happy.
That's right.
They'll just come up and be like, it's great.
Yeah, you included everything I said, and so.
Thank you very much. So,
right.
yeah, very short public.
Played the lottery
Dun-dun.
today too.
So number 7, planning commission considers committee recommendations.
Oh, yes, I missed that.
So we can take out and comments
Well, we
of the
could just-
council, because it's the committee recommendations.
Or should we just say council recommendations?
Yeah,
Council recommendations?
but they're coming from the committee, so I think it's the committee recommendations. council recommendations are consumed within the committee recommendations, aren't they?
Planning Commission considers committee recommendations and sends the council.
I would make the next one a
Just-
separate item.
Okay.
The planning commission sends their recommendations to the council, so that when we do the final resolution, which is the next step, we have their recommendations.
Okay, so say that again.
So 7, the planning commission receives the committee recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And then new 8 would be the planning commission sends the council their recommendations of the things that we've given them, what they feel should be included. They may agree with everything, they may come up with different things. I mean, just like they amend our, send us amendments on any other legislation. But we're asking them to do this beforehand, in this case, before the new resolution.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we should move that in the list here or not. So currently we have hold a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and discuss the changes proposed by the standing committees. And then the one after that would be Planning Commission receives committee recommendations. And next up,
Well, you receives their
They're gonna receive it.
recommendations and makes their own, or?
I think after the joint meeting, we can just jump right to,
Well, after the joint meeting, it's in their hands to accept, reject, come up with new.
yeah, so I think after we meet with them, maybe we jump right to drafting the resolution, because that's going to go to the Planning Commission, and that's what they're going to be making recommendations on, right, accompanying the resolution.
So we're going to give them their recommendations before the legislation is drafted. How do we get those recommendations incorporated into the new language, the new resolution?
In terms of the commission's recommendations?
Yeah. We have a joint committee with the Planning Commission,
Right.
and they get all of our committee recommendations. And then what does the Planning Commission do? Do they just sit on it until the new resolution is submitted? And then, and I thought the idea was to get the Planning Commission to buy into the amendments from all the committees, so that when the new legislation is drafted, it'll already have all of that in it.
So maybe it doesn't have to go back to the Planning Commission. I mean, maybe part of this that you're talking about right here with a joint meeting and joint discussion can qualify as being remanded back to them. I'm not, do they have to have a public hearing? These are questions I think we could ask to say, if being remanded back to the Planning Commission is the council and the Planning Commission working through changes to the document, maybe that's all that needs to be officially done in order for you to reintroduce a resolution and be done with it.
So do you think that could be done in a single meeting? Or,
Well,
I mean, if we have recommendations, from every committee, and we present them to the Planning Commission in one sitting, do we want to give them time to digest and determine the viability of all of these things?
yeah, I'm just
And then
getting back
have
to
a-
the public hearing. I don't know what the public hearing would be with the Planning Commission if you've worked that out through a work session between the planning commission and the city council, what's the purpose of them going through a formal process of a public hearing? Because they've already worked so.
I think somebody's going to need a public hearing.
Well, it would be
Well,
a public
we
hearing in front of the city council.
Yeah.
Well, but that's not the same as having the public be able to speak directly to the
Okay,
planning
I'm
commission.
just,
Well, why don't we have one session with the planning commission where we present all the committee recommendations, and then have a second meeting with them where they have an opportunity to give us their feedback. And then if needed, or if wanted, there's a public hearing. The planning commission holds a public hearing. So they've gotten our recommendations from the committees. If they want to hear more from the public, then they can say they need to have a public hearing on it.
I think you have the causality going in the wrong way. Believe it or not, the public feels a need to speak for themselves to the planning commission, and they don't necessarily feel that we convey their message to the planning commission, or totally convey it.
Okay, well, everybody is not the same, but okay, so we'll put in there after we meet with the planning commission, but they've got to have an opportunity to come back to us and tell us what they feel good about, what they don't like. And then they will have a public hearing.
Yeah.
Or should they have a public hearing before they come back to tell us what?
Well, I like the idea of, so we have our joint meeting, and then the planning commission holds a public hearing, and then they decide when they want to put together their recommendations. So they can do it the same night as the public hearing or afterwards, but then they give their recommendations to us, and then we craft the resolution.
Okay. Does that sound
yeah.
feasible?
All right, do you want me to send this out to both of you again, or everybody?
So the most essential elements of this are, we have sent it back. You say we have questions, we have concerns. We now fulfill our obligation to say what those questions and concerns are. I think it would be good to have a face-to-face meeting, and I'd like to see more of those as we go through the comp plan process as well.
Face to face with whom?
With the from the
Planning
planning
commission?
commission, right. I think we need to have more dialogue. We never have really had that, and I think that's been at a cost. But then they control. We don't get to tell them whether they have a meeting or not. They're the ones that decide.
Well, but we didn't say that we would tell them. Okay, you know, we have one meeting with them, and I asked if you thought there should be a second meeting after they've had a chance to digest all that we've given them.
And I think they can ask us for that if they want to.
Okay, well, then we can say possibly a second meeting with the planning commission.
Yeah, no, leave it open to them, but I think that's what Rob was
Mm-hmm.
saying. Then they can have their public hearing or they can come back. One of the two
Right.
things.
Or
Right.
both, if that's what they,
Yeah.
Okay, I just sent everybody the updated list. So if we can figure out if this is what we want to recommend or not.
comes on your phone faster than it comes on the iPad.
You haven't gotten it yet.
I have it on my phone, but not on my iPad.
Let's see, how do I tell which one? This is the
Not
one
there.
from
There it
534.
is, just popped up.
And I sent it to you this time, Ellie. Sorry. And I think I sent it to you. Oh, I did miss you. Sorry. Most important person to get this to. All right. So the new list would have rules and government recommendations and how to proceed with the sector study. 1, each council member collects and makes a list of what their ward constituents
Bless
have said or recommended about the existing study. 2, share the lists of constituent comments with the appropriate standing committees. 3, standing committees continue their review. All standing committee recommendations forwarded to Rules and Government Committee and staff. 4, hold a facilitated discussion with the council and staff to develop a consensus and prepare key topics for planning commission. 5, hold a joint meeting with the planning commission and discuss the changes proposed by standing committees. 6, planning commission holds public hearing. 7,
Their
planning,
option. At their option.
at their option. And 7, planning commission sends recommendations to council.
And I'm not sure whether we want them to send it or to have a second meeting and share, discuss, clarify, whatever the term might be.
Okay.
Optional second meeting with the
I'll
planning
put-
commission.
I'll put planning
During
commission
which time they would,
sends recommendations to council or holds second meeting with council.
mhm.
So what does 10 mean, referred back to the council? The resolution is introduced, right?
Referred.
New resolution moves to the council. I would take out most of this stuff about the,
Which one?
on number 8. There's a new resolution. Comes to the council.
The new resolution comes to.
Because you're telling us what's going to happen. Adoption of the administrative they propose, or a resolution proposes. I mean, that's kind of a given. It's going to come to
Right.
us as a piece of legislation, just like anything else.
Okay.
And then the normal process continues. We hold a public hearing. Yeah, 10 is not,
Just put council votes on resolution.
yeah.
Okay.
Legislation
Not
goes through the
mentioned.
normal
Okay.
council procedure.
Okay.
I would take out task force because that doesn't have anything to do with this, though, does it?
No, I just wasn't sure. Do you want to mention it as kind of a parallel process or?
I hope that's not a parallel process.
Well, I mean, I do share that. I do want the public to feel like they can. I mean, they don't need no authority, I guess, to give us recommendations. So maybe it's just a moot point. They can.
Yeah,
Do
but
it
I
anyway, we
wouldn't
don't
put
need
that
it
in
in
our
there. Okay.
notes. I don't think we want to encourage a parallel process. You know, if the public is going to be included, they should be included, not separate and apart.
Mhm.
And parallel, to me, they don't connect.
Okay. Well, do we want to do anything else with the public earlier on? Have an earlier. I mean, I guess they're welcome to come to any of the committee meetings anyway, right? So. Yeah, and we are reaching out to the wards. So we are, okay.
So once again, this is a process we've created. We created the other process. So how does this become codified as the process?
Make it
Pray
so.
on it, I got it.
Ross
yeah,
bangs
what
his
if-
fist down
yeah.
and it becomes,
So who are we sending this to?
your recommendation to the mayor's office, I assume, right? Well, actually, they don't necessarily get to say either. It's
Have to send,
it'd be a recommendation
you
to
have to
the.
send this all to the committees and they vote on it and send it back to you for.
Right, yes,
Well,
right.
I think,
long-
And we have a facilitated meeting.
I think we do have to send it to the committees and to say, this is the process we've come up with. We hope you'll concur.
Okay, so maybe we just bring it up at the next council meeting?
We
or-
can, but I
As
think
a-
it needs to be
How
in
about the work
writing.
session on the 18th? Well, I mean.
Yeah, we can
with
do it at the work
Next
session.
Yeah.
Thursday, we'll be
Good idea.
doing the comp plans.
Yeah, because we don't need to vote on this, but if we can
Right.
at least get an
Consensus.
idea if this is how.
But there
yeah,
are committees that are
exactly.
meeting in the interim, are there not, that we want them to get started on this? If not, it's
Well,
going
we
to
can
delay it
send it
another
as an
month.
email to everybody, but say we're going to, I think we should propose it as a charter amendment.
You know, sometimes you're not very helpful, you know that, right?
I try.
Yeah.
What are the groups? Economic matters? No, environmental matters.
Finance.
I don't know why economic matters wouldn't hear.
Okay, I'm gonna send you the.
updated.
Finance?
No,
You want the financial numbers up front, so, maybe it's a,
Yeah.
heaven forbid. So I will send it to you, or Rob, send it to Takita.
I'll copy
I think you
you.
guys are good because transportation is always here.
Okay, is that the only other committee?
That's the one this week. And then next week it's environmental matters, which is Rob. And I'm not sure if Shanika even wants it on her agenda for housing on Tuesday.
Well, do they consider themselves finished because of this?
They did.
did.
They did
So
consider
housing
themselves.
has already done it.
They feel like they're committed, and they wanted to complete it so we wouldn't have to see their smiling faces again.
Yep.
Okay,
So they're done.
so just transportation and environmental matters. So you guys, are you good with it?
Yeah.
Moving forward on this process, Ellie? Can you sell it to your committees?
It's at committee as an information, I mean, it's on this week's transportation as an information.
It's going to be on everyone.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't think Rhonda's ready to move forward on it until she has consensus from her constituents, so that's a little bit of an obstacle on Thursday.
Well, how does she get that? Does she want another presentation from the planning department? I mean,
I don't know, she wasn't clear. I mean, I just read what I read on email about, what she has said here publicly about Chicopen and the intersection and that concern about being, sort of the stepchild ward that gets the bad development because of the county and lots of other issues. So I'm not sure how that translates into comments.
okay, well,
But I'll try.
And also, I'm going to be using the same ID number. So once I connect this to the ID,
Yeah.
every time it's on an agenda, that will be one of the attachments.
okay, for all the committees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that leaves us. So are we going to, are you guys going to go to your respective committees with your list of issues? Or do you want the Rules Committee to respond to all of yours?
Well, I mean, I think I've been trying to think about this. My thoughts on it are kind of moving target here, but I do think the more I think about it, so environmental matters is going to be, I'm trying to keep that focused on purely environmental. I do have other thoughts, so I'd be happy to share the others that aren't necessarily environmental with the committee. And sounds like Ross has the same thing in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. right. So yeah.
Whatever you all want to do. I just want to make sure that the committees that are supposed to hear it aren't feeling like we're making decisions about
Yeah,
their stuff.
I agree.
So however you want to,
Well, I'll put together my comments and kind of categorize them and go from there to figure out how
okay.
to handle it. I don't necessarily want to dump everything onto this committee, but if there's some key things I want to bring up,
And Ross, I guess it's directed to you, the Eastport letter, what committee will address their letter? They're still
Well, I'm
waiting
going
for a
to
response.
include it in my remarks to this committee.
You mean the 5 recommendations that they came up with?
Yeah.
But you said they have more coming.
They're continuing to talk about it and noodle it around, yes.
Okay, so are there other committees?
And I think that'll go on for,
well, that's part of the
Wow.
ward comments, I think, as well, because like Bay Woods and King James Landing in my ward, they want to have time to develop their own. They've sent me comments already, but they've said they want to have more discussion. So if I get more from them, I'll incorporate them into my ward comments and send them along.
Are we going to be giving folks a timeline for doing this, or are we going to just let this drag on? I mean,
12th of never.
Planning Commission is meeting on the 2nd of May. So,
And we got a time.
we're going to have to set up that joint meeting with them. So how much time
Right,
do
it
we
will probably
want
take a few months to get on the next work session schedule, so
Yeah,
she's probably already scheduled May, maybe even June, so it will take a while to get that
Yeah, I think the
scheduled.
schedule we just discussed will be setting the schedule for the public as well. Because it's, in terms of, by the time we can actually schedule a work session and a joint meeting with the planning commission, those are gonna be the limiting factors, and I think we'll just have to let people know, this is the council's schedule. Get your comments in when you can, because I agree with you.
That's
You
why
can't
I'm
just-
asking.
yeah.
If we can't get on the planning commission's schedule, or do you think there should be a separate joint meeting? This joint meeting, should it be during their regular meeting or during our regular work session?
I think you couldn't come to their meeting because you would have a quorum, right? So,
No, we can do that. We can,
oh, but
we
all
it,
can
on
meet with
record,
them as long as it's
It's
announced.
announced, yeah.
oh, really? Okay.
And it has to be recorded, so,
Their meetings are recorded. So.
yeah.
Well, not.
But they're here.
Audio, but not video.
Oh, does it have to be video or just audio?
For them.
For us, it has to be video
Oh, I
too.
see.
So it would have to be a work session.
We need to look at that in the budget too, to make sure there's enough
course.
money in there.
Yeah. Why didn't we move money, when we moved money this week? That's all another issue.
Because we
Never
didn't
mind.
want
Good
to.
question.
So it's whether it's our work session or theirs, we need to come up with a date.
We can
and
see
then we can
what
tell the
your work
community.
session schedule is looking like.
Yeah.
So, but we're looking at June or late May. Our work
I
session
don't
is what,
see
third
before
week of May?
June.
That's another issue. I think we need to be notified
That's
of
5 weeks out.
what's on the work session
I'll
calendar.
touch base with Regina and see.
Okay, so maybe the May work session.
No, I had my agenda.
Yes, you did.
Just so you can, so you want to say a month to give your constituents an opportunity to weigh in?
Sorry.
I said you want to say a month to give them an opportunity to weigh in? Yeah.
I
I
think,
think it's limited by the schedule itself in terms of the work session and the,
No, I'm talking about how, when you want input from the community.
oh, for the ward comments. No, I mean, I'm trying to think when how late I'd accept it, but,
Well, I mean, we've got to put some timelines on this, or we're going to get comments and stuff forever.
I think we will continue to get comments as more people get introduced to this and think about it, but we will put our comments in when we have to put them in.
yeah, and if we get them late, we can just hold on to them for the comp plan or whatever else.
So we want to say public comment will be taken through May 15th or something. I just think we need a timeline of some sort,
I don't,
because the community deserves to know what
of course they
timeline
do.
we're working on.
Yeah, of course they do, but how do we get that message to the community?
Well, we'll make that announcement and we'll put it on the page on the website. You know, comments to aldermen on sector study should be received, are open until
Good idea.
something of May.
Yeah.
And Susie, thank you for joining us. You're not even tipping in here. No. We've used your outline for moving forward on the sector study and tweaked it a bit, but that's what we've been talking about, moving it
I was
forward.
actually, I was thinking tomorrow was time for me to see what we wanted to do next. So have we decided?
Well, yes,
Yeah.
we have a whole outline, so we'll send it to you.
We don't know where Rhonda
I think Key is going to put it in the system. Can you share it with
Yeah, I think she wants to just move separate legislation.
Did you hear-
Rhonda? I believe Rhonda is not necessarily separating herself, but the legislation she wants to do is separate. You're talking about the MOU? And
Yeah, that's separate from the sector
So I
study
believe
resolution.
I believe she wants legislation on that. I believe she's, you know, it's,
Yeah.
no matter what everybody else does, I think she wants to do that.
Yeah,
Right?
You mean
She does.
the MOU?
She
Right,
wants
she-
to-
Yeah,
The
we don't have an
resolution-
issue with that.
No, I know, but I'm saying it doesn't have to fit in. It can,
yeah.
Yeah, we set our schedules separate and apart from that.
Did you decide to start with the council meeting first, or did you decide to start
With the council
planning
committees,
Okay.
after input from, and that's what we we're just talking about, setting a timeline for public information, for public comment. And can you get that on the website? That public comment will be accepted through, what did we say, the middle of May?
I guess I can work with it, and I don't do anything on the website.
But you can find out who does that and get it on. Or is it Eno or somebody?
Madam,
Madam Chair, do you want me to send our recommendations to the entire council?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be fine.
yeah. Can we, I don't think we're gonna, I know it's gonna be a disappointment, but, and I did have questions about the, I don't think we're gonna get to the critical area study today. Well, I have a question on page 10.
Wait, before we move on, Rob, you're sending that from the Rules Committee
Yes.
to say that we have outlined a proposed,
Working with planning,
process for-
working with planning staff.
working with the planning staff, an outline of steps for moving forward. And that we will advertise public comment on the webpage, comments to go to respective aldermen through the middle of May.
Is the public involved in anything that Sally and Pete will be at so that there's some interaction, or is the public testimony just
say that
one-sided?
again?
Is it two-sided public comment so that their questions could be answered by Pete or Sally? Because I know they have a lot of questions.
Peter, Sally, who?
I assume that they will be, and correct me, that they'll be at the subcommittee meetings, the standing committee meetings.
That's okay, and so the public is
So-
welcome to those, which,
So when your constituents reach out to you, you give them the opportunity to come to your committee meeting or whatever
Yeah.
committee meeting is
Yeah.
appropriate, and they'll be there to
answer questions.
answer questions.
Yeah.
Okay? You guys?
It's helpful if we have material ahead of time, so we can do research.
Okay, so that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Susie, did you have another question for us? No. Oh, okay. All right, so, going on to the next agenda item?
Which
Can-
is,
if-
what?
Can I just ask, for critical area, did you, if we don't talk about it at this meeting, it could, and maybe it could go on the next meeting agenda, if this is how you want to proceed with going through the legislation before it's introduced, or do you want us to have it introduced and then we'll come back, or, I mean, or do you want me to go through like line by line and say what I changed, or I'm
Oh,
just
yes,
trying
I
to
think-
really get a sense of
Yeah,
the
line by
process for
line.
this legislation.
Are you talking about for the,
This.
Critical area. We,
okay,
I guess today we weren't sure what all you wanted to go through and to what level of detail you wanted to go for. I mean, because we did the work session and we sort of outlined as much as we possibly could when we had the Critical Area Commission here. We have the table with all the different changes.
Right.
And all of that. Yeah, that's that table, and we kind of went over that at a broad view, so we weren't sure what, I mean, if we, what Sally's just saying is, we're not going to do it today. What is the strategy that you want? Do you want to start with your comments, and we can go through each of your comments and answer the questions and discuss amendments? Because I'm going outside of the cycle, talking to Sheila and Rob in environmental is what we've learned, at least I've learned through the legislative process. Once we introduce it and it comes to committee, the amendment process gets it all gobbledygooked, and I would like to get your thoughts and ideas so we can, as we introduce it, your thoughts and ideas are already included in it, and so when we come to committee, you see how we've structured it in the location where it's been, you know, modified or amended, if you will. So I'm just, you know, because when we go back forth, if you remember the last 14, 18.
Your omnibus.
Yeah, that thing was just.
Right. Hey,
So that's what I'm, you know.
well, there are 63 pages of changes. That's what I'm saying.
So that's why I would,
So should we, as a committee, highlight the things that we want to have issue with or
have questions on, or if you have
questions on.
specific things you want changed, I would
Yes.
like to know that now.
instead of going through the whole?
That's what I would suggest, only
Yeah.
because, keep in mind, this is a model ordinance. We've worked with the Critical Area Commission. I have at least the staff's blessing on this. Once you adopt it, it will go in front of the full commission with a staff recommendation, and if they need to be very familiar with it to give a recommendation to keep it moving. Because ultimately, if we don't, this has happened to me before. The council changed something. They went back to the Critical Area Commission. They weren't in agreement with that change. Right. So I had to go back to my council and say we need to modify our law again. So that's all. I thought that's a big deal. We can do all that. We can work with the staff as we work through the committee meetings and
So,
get it done.
Let me ask, has the Critical Area Commission already agreed to all of these?
Staff have
Critical area
concurred,
staff?
the staff, and they pretty much, I mean, I think they have the pulse on the commission themselves. So they have agreed that this meets, this is, I would tell you, I almost want to have this as done as a refinement rather than a whole panel discussion. I don't think I'm going to get there, but that's going to be my sell job. Which means the executive director or the chairman of the commission says, I'm handling this as a refinement. He agrees that it's met all the state code requirements, and unless somebody objects, it's approved by the state commission. I don't know if I'll win that one, but that's kind of where I wanted to go. I mean, I only put that as a preface. So what are the changes that we want to talk? So if there's something significant, I want to have a conversation with staff ahead of time, say, look, council was thinking of these changes in our critical area program. So,
are you all prepared to offer your discussion items for?
I have some, but I know the other question is, this is going to be coming before the Environmental Matters Committee.
we don't know because the legislation isn't.
yeah. No, we were coming.
Well, no, but I mean, maybe we don't have to have two separate meetings, though. It'd be nice if we could, if you want to talk about it in this committee too, unless we want to focus on different areas.
But I think, well, I just want to, if time is limited, because I know there's another HBCs tonight, so.
Well, we have Ellie's legislation get to.
Right. So if
And
we
I
can
have a
agree
community
that
meeting at 6:30.
it doesn't necessarily have to be tonight, because I think, like you said, the Environmental Matters is going to focus on the Forest Drive. At the next meeting, we probably couldn't get to it till May, I think you said, for critical area. If we could just agree that you guys are going to come to us with, these are the things, instead of going through the 63
Yeah.
pages, I guess
Right.
is my concern. I didn't want to.
But my question was, how much of this, like I'm looking at page 10, where it's the lot area coverage. Suppose we wanted to change residential from 50% to 40%. Can we do that? I mean, suppose we wanted to have it be more restrictive, that you can't cover as much of the lot.
I think these are the thoughts and ideas that that you give me now, and I will go
Right.
back to the critical
Okay.
area staff. And so we're not doing this during the legislative cycle.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are, we would probably give you unintended consequences to those. And critical area commission probably give us other unintended consequences as
Well,
to
that's why I'm wondering how much
Yeah.
of this is already pretty much fait
I think you
accompli.
give me your thoughts and your ideas, and we'll look at it and do the research and come back to you. I mean, I really want
Okay.
all of
So-
your thoughts and ideas.
So
and
do you have
discussion.
things you can give him today? Or,
Not really. I mean, that was the one, there was a couple of other things, but I haven't really gone through it, tooth and nail.
Well, you can just
Yeah,
send it to us via email before the next meeting, and we'll do like
Right.
Pete was saying, we'll prepare,
Answers and
Answers
discussions,
to-
and have done some research for you.
And it's on, I haven't sat down yet to figure out exactly what I want on the Environmental Matters Committee on the next agenda, or spoken with my two other colleagues on there. We may have room to at least get the conversation started and to give you some
Okay.
broad ideas. I mean, I haven't That's all I've done at the time. I haven't read through every single item. I, skimmed it and put together some broader thoughts. And I may have some, so anyway, I'll try to focus on that and give you some ideas in terms of things I might want to talk about more at the committee meeting either next week or the next month. But
Yeah, I figured Force Drive was going to come, like you said in your email to me. I think that's going to dominate the conversation, so that's fine. As long as we get the conversation started, and I keep it moving.
Well,
I'm on the clock.
the problem is, it may be good to do it then, because the problem is the next meeting's probably might be, subsumed by some other kind of legislation. So I'll get back to you about.
Okay.
Okay, so any recommendations, concerns, or ideas, we'll be emailing them to you within the next 2 weeks.
And copy each other.
And copy one another on it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
within the next 2 weeks, and then we'll put it back on the agenda for your responses at the next meeting,
Fantastic.
if that works. Okay. All right. And that takes us to legislation, 01019.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Well, on this one, I'd kind of like to make a motion to postpone until we get, I know Mr. Ledoux had some, although I do have some other comments and questions myself, and Madam Chair, I don't know how you want to handle that. Do we want to wait till the law office looks at?
I thought Linda's response to Chris was very positive. He promised, he's got a couple of big things this week that he's got to do for real work. He sent, I don't know if anybody else got it, I didn't look, but he sent me an email referring to the manual, and he did email Linda on that same email. So my sense is that they were going to find a way to get together. She seemed very pleased that somebody had looked at it in the detail, and I think I certainly don't have any particular expertise on this. Chris, since he's used it often, and this is right up his alley as far as what he does as a professional, I think it'd be good to let those two have their time. So I would recommend we postpone till the next meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Yeah, I'll second that, and if I could just have
Further
a discussion about it. Like I said, I only had a few comments, and some of them were related to Mr. Ledoux's, and one was, like he said, in terms of clearly stating that the residents can go to the state
Mediator.
ombudsman and the board, I forget the commission they have. And so my thoughts were along those lines, and I was wondering if we could use our ethics commission as some kind of appeals board. So I can certainly, I had a couple other questions I can certainly perhaps email to Linda.
That was going to be my suggestion.
Okay.
Send them to her, since she's going to be looking at this closely
Okay.
because of Mr. Ledoux's questions. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of postponing 01019, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then R11, is that right? Annapolis City Dock Urban Land Institute, Baltimore Technical Assistance Panel, reclaiming a local and national treasure.
So I have a new name for Ellie, Mack Truck. All of these attachments.
How many days of reading is all that?
No.
I brought most of them with me.
No, actually, the purpose of those attachments were to demonstrate, or to document, is probably the word, the documents that the ULI Baltimore Technical Assistant Panel received before they did their walkthrough study and recommendation. So, yeah, so I can just give you a summary of why I'm asking my colleagues to approve this as a resolution. Do you want me to hear my
Yes.
speech here? Okay. For those of you that lived here during the fall of 2013, you may remember the approval of the City Dock Master Plan. The plan became a political hot potato in an election year, and when amended, it resulted in a very watered-down version of the original. The most contentious inclusion in the plan were regarding a building height of a proposed development at the old Fawcett's building and the conversion of Memorial Circle to a T-configured intersection and lots of surface parking removed without alternative options. It was approved by City Council contingent on future studies, the majority having since been completed. The plan sat dormant for 4 years as it was defined by politics and the aforementioned emotional flashpoints, for lack of a better word, parking and potential development. So it's important to learn from this stalled study and why the ULI, why I am hopeful, with that said, that the ULI Action Committee effort to reinvigorate City Dock will be different for 3 main reasons. One, it has a defined leader, past Planning and Zoning Director Eileen Fogarty. 2, it has a collaborative approach. And 3, an established framework to work from. For background, Historic Annapolis, in reaction to a rezoning threat, for lack of a better word, last year, if you remember, to City Dock, and I thank you for your support on that. I will forever be very thankful for that. Anyway, so for background, Historic Annapolis, in reaction to a rezoning threat to the Historic District height and bulk parameters last summer, contacted the Urban Land Institute, who are experts in land use planning. Their technical assistant panel provided their recommendations in their 2018 report after review of all relative past studies, interview sessions with 60 stakeholders, and 2 standing room only public meetings. After several months, the City Dock Action Committee and 9 working teams were announced at the March 20th kickoff meeting. Again, that was a full house. So the technical assistant panel report that I have here, and it's, you know, it's not very long at all. It's actually 30-something pages. It actually elaborates on what the public heard in these chambers when they reported their findings. They just put it in writing. But it's important to note that it provided a framework as a benchmark. So this working group, this action committee, they're not starting with a blank canvas, nor succumbing to any special interests. And they focus on different disciplines and areas and are asked to present a viable product back to the action committee this fall, followed by public hearing and city council review. And also important is that this effort is led by a partnership between Historic Annapolis and the Mayor's Office, and elevated to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, quote, to reclaim a local and national treasure, because also, as you know, a year ago, City Dock was labeled an endangered historic property because of the events that unfolded last year. But and I'm glad we're talking about this today, because I think this result will prove the importance of multidisciplinary work and by all citizens and facilitated by professionals. The ULI report says it best. Quote, although City Dock has its charm for many reasons, it is begging for more attention, care, and greater offerings. Herein lies the challenge and opportunity for Annapolis and City Dock, and the way forward for a community that is eager to embrace the future by building upon the authenticity of the past. I would suggest that if this is successful, this model, which we will see the results of this September, we could follow it for the comp plan, in that it is a multidisciplinary approach, and I like the way that Eileen has set up these work groups. So why a resolution? There was no need to do a resolution. This resolution will, I mean, let me say that there wasn't any legal reason to do a resolution, because this will not codify anything. This importance of this resolution is to say, at this moment in time, this is what we are all working on for City Dock, so that there aren't any again, for lack of a better word, rogue efforts. You know what I mean? This is it. And to make it even more specific, I guess, in that it is not a blank canvas, Eileen did specify at the kickoff meeting, I guess a couple of weeks ago, that it is driven on 5 principles. And if you allow me to just read what those 5 principles, 5 guiding principles.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I do have a 6:30 community meeting for which I cannot be.
Did I sell you?
So, would you just review very quickly the amendments? You have some amendments to your legislation.
Yeah. So the amendment is just what I was just talking about. She talked about 5 guiding principles, and I thought it would be good to reiterate what those 5 guiding principles were in the amendment. And I don't.
So you're inserting these 5 items
As a whereas?
As a whereas, new whereas.
Yeah, enliven the pedestrian experience, ensure the future health, provide new accessible parking, preserve and enhance the maritime heritage, and reduce the flooding at City Dock immediately while implementing these long-term comprehensive resiliency efforts. So that was, the resolution was amended accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Discussion?
So I would move that we recommend the amendments and that we recommend favorably to the council for passage of this resolution.
So let's take the first one. You proposed recommending
the
amendment, the Tierney proposed amendment.
Right.
Can I get a second?
A second.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And then your second motion was to make a favorable recommendation
To the council.
For R1119.
As amended.
As amended.
Second.
Second, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for coming to share with us.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question, though? I mean,
Sure.
related, because I'm, what do you think about the possibility in this effort that, I'm not asking for it, I don't know. They may need money. I mean, I heard Eileen Fogarty say, you can get so much out of volunteers, like markers and flip charts, but when they start doing schematic plans and concept drawings and having a product, and is that something I should bring up during the finance committee meetings? I don't know. Is this something that you've dealt with before, where people put together plans and they need?
I would have thought that we would have asked that question while Mr. Gutwall was here, because I know he does have some limited budgets for
studies
and stuff like that.
Okay,
so
I can put Eileen Fogarty in touch with him and see what they can work out.
If they've got a specific request, I'm not aware.
Or it's a partnership between HA and the city. So I'm sure HA has resources, and we are paying Eileen Fogarty some money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just want to know which direction
Mayor's
to go with
office
that.
seems to find money.
Yeah. We'll just make.
But we keep giving them money too, so.
We'll just make the deficit 5.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
We'll raise the tax rate 8%, 8 cents.
Don't even say that on microphone, really, in jest. I know.
It's either that or cut the money for the mayor's office.
All right, that exhausts our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I'm running.